everyone. Thank you for tuning into this update. I'm Joshua Dobi. Appreciate so much your willingness to take a few minutes here, and also for the increase in frequency that I'm sending these out to you. I appreciate your accommodation of that. Just during this time of more negative volatility than what we have seen here over the last couple of years, I like to spend a few more minutes than usual in front of you, so hopefully this isn't a bother to you. I promise I'm going to keep today's relatively short compared to some of my other updates here in the recent past. But as of the time of this recording, we just finished the end of the second quarter, calendar-wise here for 2022, which means we're at the halfway point. And if you watch business news on television, or you read Wall Street Journal or Forbes magazine or those kinds of things, you probably saw some, let's call it less than encouraging remarks about the first half of this year. By all reasonable measures, insofar as stock indexes are concerned, it was one of the most challenging in terms of negative performance. It was one of the more challenging first halves of the year that we've had literally in the last 50 years. So it has been, again, a stretch that is somewhat unusual in terms of the performance. Again, I'm speaking most especially to market indexes when I'm saying that. And certainly when we look at it from a historical standpoint, there's been a notable degree of pullback, especially in our more aggressive or growth-oriented ends of the investment universe. Also, and this happens even more rarely, instead of having more of a non-congruent kind of movement in terms of where bonds and stocks have moved, bonds and stocks have both been, meaning especially when we're talking about government securities or government bonds, have both been in the negative for the first time in an exceptionally long time. Actually, I was going back and looking at some data from literally from the 19th century when that was the case the first time in a year, because usually when stocks are down, bonds will increase, specifically government securities or government bonds will tend to increase in value. Movement out of the market, flight to safety kind of thing, and that tends to be the case. Not so this year. Not so, because what happened at the same time that we had a pullback in the market for a number of different reasons, and I'm speaking to the stock market there, we also had a pullback in the bond market due to an increase or a significant move upward in interest rates. And those of you who have heard me talk on other occasions have heard me talk about the fact that as interest rates rise, bond values in the secondary market tend to fall. And so we had those two things happening at the same time here during the first half of the year. So that then just leads to a very easily understood, I should say, question says, oh my goodness, now what? Should we do anything? Well, I'm going to start out with a terrible answer. It depends, but generally speaking, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to change course 180 degrees because we're going through a tough time. In the same ways, it doesn't make sense, at least in my world, it doesn't make sense that when things are going very well to change course necessarily either. But in both instances where we have things either are doing very well or times like now, when things aren't doing particularly as well, at least across the broad market, that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to change course simply because of what's happening in the moment. While these last 6 months may have seemed long and you're going to get second quarter statements and that may not be a pleasant experience for you on that end of things, we have been here many, many times before. And just in looking at just over my career, which is coming into 27 years, of being in this business, about 9 times that this has happened when I was looking back over the last more than a quarter of a century in seeing what happens basically every 3 to 4 years. We go through a time like this. It's not on a clock, obviously, but relatively speaking, that's about the cycle in which we take. So this is, again, something that is not unusual. It's unpleasant, certainly if you're in a space where your values have pulled back here over the last 6 months. Certainly not something that I like from my end of things, either on your behalf or certainly for my own space. But we have been here many, many times before. And there are very few things that I can say to you with the words promise or guarantee associated with them, so I'm not going to use those terms exactly here. But what I can say is that based upon market history, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to radically change the direction of your financial ship just because of what's happened here over the last several months. While these last 6 months feel like a long time, in the scope of things, they truly aren't. When you're looking at how we put plans together and strategies that we put into place, or we're projecting for what your experience may be in retirement, we never make decisions based upon what's happening in 6 months, ever. And we always know that there are going to be good times and not so good times with regards to market performance. The other thing that's true, and this applies especially to folks who are taking income from your portfolio, and I understand when folks are feeling queasy about that and saying, okay, we're taking income and our values have pulled back, completely understand, very appropriate kind of feeling there. But in terms of, again, wanting to radically change from what we're doing in this space, the only reason that that would ever make sense is if you needed to take all of your money in cash to use for something else today. If you think about it, that's really the only rational reason to do a full liquidation and to do something different if you needed that cash to go do something else today. If you're taking it in small pieces, what we know is that over time, the market will cycle back out. And so we don't I say this in most instances, there's always a caveat, there always are instances where the circumstances may be different, but generally speaking, that's what makes the most sense. And that's very, very important to keep in mind because I know what you're seeing on the television, I know what you're reading in the newspapers, and it can be a very anxious kind of occasion. I completely understand and appreciate that. Also, we have midterm elections, which are coming up here in November, and whether it's midterms or on the standard cycle, there's always a sense of apprehension that comes with that as well. So you put all of those things in the proverbial mix, and it can make for a challenging time. But when we look at it and we take a step back and in the most dispassionate ways that we can, understand not only where we've been, where we are, but what we expect going forward, while I have zero expectation at this point that this is going to turn around in days or weeks, I absolutely do know that it will turn around. And what will be the reason for that? We probably won't know it in great clarity until we're well beyond it. That tends to be how these cycles move. So it's the kind of thing, again, that we know it's going to happen. We don't know exactly when it is, but I would encourage you to be patient. We've got some headwinds in front of us here that are challenging from an economic and from a financial standpoint through which we're going to need to work. And that's going to take months, not days. So we're anticipating that there's going to be time yet ahead of us where we're going to need to take a look at that and see what the matriculation may be at that point and how that comes together. But again, I would encourage you to be patient. This is something we have seen many, many times before. Well, I promised you a short update here, especially because it's a holiday weekend, and I want to be especially sensitive to that. Please hear a word from me. Happy Independence Day to you. It is a very special and sacred holiday, giving thanks for those who have literally given their lives so that we may live in this great country with all of its good and all of its challenges, that we are able to live in this great country in free ways. And all of those who serve us yet today, often in foreign and faraway lands, who stand guard and do so that they can protect the freedoms that certainly I and I know you get to enjoy. Thank you again so much for your time, dear ones. Always, always, always. Please feel free to reach out to me. You have questions, you'd like to review your particular notes or your portfolio positions, or just to take a look at it in light of where things are in the overall market. I always enjoy hearing from you. Always happy to do that. Never hesitate to reach out. Okay, folks, again, thank you for your time, and until the next time, I'll look forward to talking with you soon.